Chapter 3: Result-based management and key approaches to strategic planning. The chapter is divided in 4 sections. The first one is result-based management. Second one, the problem-based planning. The third, planning by objectives. And the fourth, the human right-based approach. Result-based management. First, its foundations. Result-based management is a concept appeared in the 1960s with the publication of Peter Drucker's book on managing for results in 1964. Result-based management is defined as a management strategy by which all stakeholders contributing directly or indirectly to the achievement of a set of results ensure that the processes, products, and services contribute to the achievement of the desired results, which meant outputs, outcome, impact, and purpose. Actors, in turn, use information and evidence on actual results to inform decisions on the design, resources, and delivery of programs and activities, and for accountability and reporting. As a tool, RBM provides conceptual basis and framework within which to embed the result of analysis arising from the use of strategic planning approach. It is a comprehensive approach to project and program management that focuses on defining measurable results as well as the methodologies and tools to be used to achieve those results. This way of working contributes to improved performance and accountability through a clear logic, which is plan, manage, and measure an intervention by focusing on the result you want to achieve. There are 3 main principles of the result-based management. The first one is the stakeholders' accountability. This involves accountability linked to the result and deliverable contained in the plan. The second one is a national ownership of the plan. This reflects the fact that results contained in the development plan respond to national priorities as defined and identified and validated by the various national stakeholders. The third one is inclusiveness. From the perspective of the human right-based approach, it reflects the need to involve all stakeholders without exclusion in the planning process so that the resulting plan reflects their aspiration. There are some key concepts of the RBM. We will just see the most important of them, and the other one could be seen in the indicated here manual or RBM glossary. The first one is outcome. It's considered as a change in a measurable state or condition on beneficiaries that result from the use of the product, revealed by the causal analysis in response to structural causes. The products themselves result from the activities of different economic agents specialized in their production. They are change in the skills or capacity and ability of individual institutions, or the availability of new products and services that result from the realization of activity within a development intervention. Outcomes represent change in institutional and behavioral capacity for development conditions that occur between the completion of outputs and the achievement of impacts. So one of the major tools used in result-based management is the result chain, which shows the relation between the highest level of result, which is impact, the effect, the outcome actually, and the product and the activities. For the planning exercise, you go from top to the down, from top down, so that the planning exercise. For the implementation, you go from the activities moving to the outputs, and from there go to the outcomes, and finally to the impact. So that's the result chain. We move to the following planning approach, which is planning by objective. It consists for a company to define the actions to be initiated in the present based on the objective envisaged in the future. To make a linear representation of a problem to be solved whose main solution corresponds to the general objective. And also to define a specific objective based on the causal relation resulting from the analysis of the central problem. And finally, to implement this solution during the planning cycle. The second approach is the so-called issue-based planning. It is also called challenge-based strategic model. It departs from the present, the problematic situation, to project the company into the future, which is the desired situation. It consists in identifying the main challenge facing the organization today in order to find solutions likely to promote its development in the future. And that approach is available in two versions. But before coming to the two versions, we may say that its implementation can be broken into four major steps. I want to say the implementation of the issue-based planning. The first one is the identification of key issues by the management team or stakeholders. The second, the analysis of this problem to identify the causes. The third, formulation of solutions that will be transformed into objectives. And finally, the elaboration of action plans with deadline and the required means. These action plans are then implemented, monitored, and evaluated. If things goes according to the plan, and the plan cycle ends with the resolution of the identified issues. The first version of the issue-based planning is also widely used in economic and social planning, or its own, or in combination with the goal-based approach. The version 1 is relating to the issue-based planning approach alone. It is quite similar to the one used by the companies as described above, but with two nuances. The first one is relating to the difficulty in qualifying problem, in qualifying issues sometimes. It's greater than in business, in the companies, due to the nature of conflicting interests and power relations that structure societies. The power relations that give rise to these problems take more time, more than in a company, to be addressed and resolved. The second version of the issue-based planning is in combination with the goal-based approach, and it consists of the following major steps. The first is the formulation of the vision, a crucial step in the strategic planning process because the vision is considered as the end of the ends. The second one is the formulation in the form of objective of the missions meant to achieve the vision. The third one is the identification and formulation in the form of a problem of the existing gaps at the level of the realization of each of the missions. And the following is the carrying out of causal analysis of the problems identified. This step ends with the obtaining of the problem tree. The following steps is the formulation of solutions to the identified issues. Like the problems identified, there are three levels: impact, outcome, and output. Then follows the formulation of indicators, the development of the result chain, result framework, the definition of the means to achieve the plan, the drafting of the program document. Follows the technical validation of the document, its political validation and adoption by the authorities, and the finalization of the plan. So we move to the last approach, which is the human rights-based approach. First, human rights are all the prerogatives related to the status of human being held by any person, regardless of gender, social status, race, religion, etc., whose respect is supposed to be ensured by all the states of the world, starting with the state where the individual concerned comes from. Human rights-based approach to development is a conceptual framework for human development whose normative basis is made up of by the international rule defined in this field, and which concretely aims to promote and to protect those same rights. It seeks to integrate the norms, standards, and principles of the international human rights system into development plans, policies, and strategies. It highlights the responsibility and obligation of governments and other development stakeholders to their citizens in accordance with their international commitments. It creates a framework for inclusive and participatory development and is based on the following principle: universality and inalienability. Human rights applies to everyone, everywhere, in all circumstances. Indivisibility principle, which means that human rights are indivisible and must be considered holistically. Interdependence and indivisibility, which means all human rights are interrelated and interdependent, and they influence each other. Equality and non-discrimination, which means everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Empowerment of the poor. The empowerment of the poor, that is increasing their freedom of choice and action so that they can structure their own lives. The following principle is liability and the rule of law. That responsibility derives from the duty and obligation of state and the international community to take measures to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of all. The principle of participation and transparency means that everyone has the right to fully contribute to, participate in, and enjoy the political, economic, social, and cultural development of their community. It requires that citizens, particularly vulnerable groups, be consulted in the development of the policy to be implemented. So, the human rights-based approach is based primarily on the values, norms, and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the legally binding convention treaties deriving therefrom. As such, human rights-based approach defines the vision of development, that is to guarantee the freedom, well-being, and dignity of all individuals everywhere in the world, thus laying the foundation for public service missions. The subject of law, the right holder, is the subject of development. The duty bearers, which are the states and other natural or legal persons who are supposed to ensure and guarantee the observance of the said rights. By doing so, the human right-based approach translates people's needs into rights, recognizes the human person as an active subject and holder of claims, refers to marginalization, discrimination, and exploitation as central causes of poverty, and analyzes poverty as a violation of fundamental human rights. Thus, human rights-based approach contributes to promote the sustainability of development initiative by empowering people, especially the most marginalized, so that they participate in policy formulation and hold those whose duty is to act accountable. It changed the position of the beneficiary or group of beneficiaries from a passive recipient of the aid to a right holder likely to make claims against the duty bearers, who are the public authorities. Human rights provide the vision of development planning, the freedom, well-being, dignity of all people everywhere. It provides service public mission by legitimizing the status of debtor obligation of public authorities. It provides also the goal or impact through the mission of public services, which correspond to the raison d'être of these public services. The implementation phases of the human rights-based approach. It encompasses 6 phases. First one is the problem identification. The second one, the hierarchization of problems. And the third one, the causal analysis. The fourth, the formulation of solutions. The fifth, the formulation of the development path. The sixth, development of the raw or core result framework. It will be complemented by other actions that are essential to the effective achievement of the result expected by the program or plan. It is very important to underline that in accordance with the principle of participation and transparency, the social group affected by the plan must take part in all phases of implementation of the approach. So it's important also to underline that in conclusion, let's say, of this module, that the challenge facing the development countries, and especially the African countries, with growing inequality, persistence of poverty, increased risk, threat to environment, the increased need to formulate development plan capable of responding to this challenge, vulnerability to shocks, inequality, threats, peace, and environment. It needs to take into account in the National Development Plan, the 2030 and 2063 agendas, calls for deep change in the way we design the National Development Plan. So our hope is that by introducing the purpose and delivery oriented plan or planning may support some alleviation of the difficulty that have been underlined upstream. So our deep hope is that during the coming module, we may examine the feasibility of introducing that new approach, which actually is borrowing from the existing approach to make a solid eclectic, I may say, tool, but that is supposed to really support the planners in our country to be able to formulate some transformational change. Thank you for your attention.